History often feels inevitable, like a story already written. The Roman Empire, a titan of the ancient world, seems like it was always destined to dominate for centuries. But what if I told you that on several occasions, this colossus teetered on the brink of annihilation? That the entire course of Western civilization hung by a thread, decided by a single battle, a single moment of desperation or genius? Today, we're not talking about the fall of Rome. We're talking about the times it almost fell, but didn't. These are the battles that could have ended the Roman Empire. Our story begins not with a legion, but with a howl. In the dense, dark forests of Germania, a storm was gathering. Its own 9 AD Rome, under the Emperor Augustus, is at the zenith of its power. 3 of its finest legions, the 17th, 18th, and 19th, are marching under the command of Publius Quinctilius Varus. They're confident, professional, and utterly unprepared for what awaits them. Their guide, a trusted Germanic chieftain named Arminius, a man who had received Roman citizenship, learned Latin, and served in the Roman military. He knew their tactics, their formations, their strengths, and their weaknesses. And he was about to use that knowledge to set the most devastating trap in Roman history. Deep within the Teutoburg forest, Arminius led Varus's legions into a nightmare. The narrow, muddy paths broke the disciplined Roman formations, turning their organized might into a scattered, struggling mob. Then the trap was sprung. From the trees, from the ridges, thousands of Germanic warriors descended. The disciplined legionaries, unable to form their famous testudo or execute their precise maneuvers, were cut down. For 3 days, the slaughter continued. It wasn't a battle, it was an extermination. Over 20,000 Roman soldiers, a tenth of the entire imperial army, were wiped out. When the news reached Rome, the city was gripped by panic. The Emperor Augustus, old and distraught, would reportedly wander his palace for months, banging his head against the walls and crying, "Quinctilius Varus, give me back my legions." Why was this so catastrophic? The Rhine frontier was now wide open. There was nothing to stop a united Germanic force from pouring into Gaul and marching all the way to Italy. Rome's aura of invincibility was shattered. The psychological blow was immense. It forced Rome to accept a permanent boundary at the Rhine River, halting its expansion into northern Europe forever. If Arminius had managed to unite the Germanic tribes and press his advantage, the history of Europe would look completely different. But internal Germanic rivalries saved Rome, allowing them to regroup and secure the frontier. The Teutoburg forest wasn't just a defeat. It was a ghost that would haunt the Roman imagination for centuries, a terrifying reminder of their own vulnerability. Let's jump forward nearly 250 years, the 3rd century. A period so chaotic historians call it the crisis of the 3rd century. The empire was fractured, plagued by civil wars, economic collapse, and constant barbarian invasions. It was a house of cards waiting for one final push to topple it. And that push almost came from a direction no one expected, the East, not from the familiar Parthians, but from a new, aggressive power, the Sassanid Persian Empire. And at its head was the ambitious and brilliant king Shapur I into 60 AD. The Roman Emperor Valerian led a massive army to confront him near the city of Edessa. Valerian was desperate to restore Roman prestige and push back the Sassanid threat. The stage was set for a decisive clash of empires. The Battle of Edessa was a disaster of epic proportions for Rome. We don't have a blow-by-blow account, but we know the outcome. The entire Roman army was encircled and annihilated. And for the first and only time in Roman history, an emperor was captured alive in battle. Shapur I didn't just defeat Valerian, he humiliated him. Sassanid carvings show Shapur on horseback with Valerian kneeling before him, a symbol of absolute submission. Legend says Shapur used the Roman emperor as a human footstool to mount his horse. The capture of an emperor, the living embodiment of the Roman state, sent shockwaves across the world. The empire was rudderless, its enemies emboldened. In the east, the breakaway Palmyrene Empire under Queen Zenobia seized Roman provinces. In the west, the Gallic Empire declared independence. Rome was literally falling apart. So, how did Rome survive this? The answer lies in a series of tough, pragmatic, and utterly ruthless leaders who followed, known as the Barracks Emperors. Men like Gallienus, Claudius Gothicus, and Aurelian. They fought tooth and nail, not for glory, but for sheer survival. Aurelian, in a whirlwind 5-year reign, defeated the Alemanni, rebuilt the walls of Rome, reconquered the Gallic Empire in the west, and then marched east to crush Zenobia's Palmyrene Empire. He literally pieced the Roman world back together through sheer force of will. He earned the title Restitutor Orbis, restorer of the world. Without his almost superhuman efforts, the collapse that began at Edessa would have been final. The Roman Empire would have been a forgotten relic by the year 300. Now we move to our final and perhaps most famous near miss. The year is for 51 AD. The Western Roman Empire is a shadow of its former self, a fragile state propped up by barbarian mercenaries. And from the vast steppes of Central Asia comes a force of nature, a man whose name would become a synonym for destruction, Attila the Hun. Known as the Scourge of God, Attila had forged a massive tribal empire, and now he had set his sights on the riches of Gaul. He wasn't just another barbarian chieftain. He commanded a seemingly unstoppable horde that had left a trail of terror across Eastern and Central Europe. For the Romans, this was an existential threat. Facing this apocalypse was a Roman general of Vandal descent, Flavius Idius. A brilliant strategist and diplomat, Idius understood that the dwindling Roman army couldn't face the Huns alone. He did something remarkable. He forged a coalition of Rome's traditional enemies. He convinced the Visigoths, the Franks, the Alans, and others that Attila was a threat to them all. On the Catalonian plains, in modern-day France, two of the largest armies of the ancient world collided. It was a chaotic, brutal, and bloody affair. Romans, Goths, and Franks fighting side by side against Huns, Ostrogoths, and a dozen other subject peoples. The fighting was so fierce, an ancient chronicler said a river flowing through the battlefield ran red with blood. At the center of the conflict, the Visigothic king, Theodoric I, was killed, but his son Thorismund rallied his warriors for a furious charge. By nightfall, the battlefield was a scene of unimaginable carnage. Attila had been pushed back to his camp of wagons, but was not decisively defeated. He prepared for a final stand, building a funeral pyre of wooden saddles, ready to throw himself into the flames rather than be captured, but Idius made a calculated decision. He feared that if he completely destroyed the Huns, his powerful Visigothic allies would become the new primary threat to Rome, so he allowed Attila and the remnants of his army to slip away. It was a gamble. Attila would invade Italy the next year, but after his mysterious death in 453, his empire crumbled as quickly as it had formed. The Battle of the Catalonian Plains didn't save the Western Roman Empire forever. It would fall just 25 years later. But it did stop Attila. It prevented Gaul from being completely overrun and absorbed into a Hunnic empire. It was the last great victory of the Western Roman army, a final, defiant roar before the end. From the dark forests of Germania to the sun-baked plains of Persia and the blood-soaked fields of Gaul, the Roman Empire faced moments that could have, and perhaps should have, been its end. These battles show us that history isn't a straight line. It's a series of close calls, lucky breaks, and heroic, sometimes desperate, stands against overwhelming odds. The survival of Rome in these moments shaped the world we live in today, influencing our laws, our languages, and our culture. It's a powerful reminder that nothing is guaranteed, and the world we know was built not just on victories, but on the disasters that were narrowly averted. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey through Rome's darkest hours. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button and consider subscribing for more deep dives into history. Let me know in the comments which of these battles you think was the most critical. Until next time, stay curious.